Okay, welcome back everyone. This afternoon we're going to be focused now on our Books at JSTOR program and looking at our sales performance and some of the sales and marketing strategies that we've been utilizing this year and that we're planning to be doing through the rest of this year and into 2021. Looking across some of the various business models that we have in the books program. And then we're going to follow that with a session with open access publishing. I've mentioned that earlier. John Scher from University of North Carolina will be talking about publishing direct as open access. And we will then also have Angela Carreño from New York University talking about library funding aspect of that. So now I'm going to go ahead and reintroduce Rebecca Seger, who will do our sales and marketing updates, and also want to be introducing Cristina Mezuk, who is our editor for Books at JSTOR. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, John. Again, my name is Rebecca Seger. I'm the Vice President for Marketing Outreach and Strategic Partnerships. And I'm going to be here talking to you today about our books program at the Books at JSTOR, our 2020 performance. I'm going to give a quick talk on current marketing conditions and talk about our future strategies. And I'm here along with my colleague, Cristina Mezuk. All right, so just to give you a sense of the landscape of how many institutions around the world are now partaking in Books at JSTOR, we're up to about 1,600 institutions that have purchased titles from the books program, which includes new institutions. Over 200 new institutions have already been added in 2020, and that has really escalated over the last several months, which is fantastic for the program. We have seen a tremendous increase in usage with over 24 million requests, which is over double the amount that we've had at the same point last year. So users are finding the content. We're doing a great job with discoverability and ensuring that books results are really showing up in the searching in a really positive way. I'm going to give you little insights into the sales year to date, which is, again, a very positive story. So from 2018 to 2019, through January through September time period, we had an increase of 18.6%, which was, again, a really healthy performance. And today, in the midst of an economic crisis and the pandemic, we're actually seeing even greater growth this year, almost 25% growth, and we've sold more than $10 million worth of ebooks through the end of September. There's lots of reasons for that, and we'll talk about each of the different models in a moment. But I just wanted to give you a sense of kind of the full year picture as well. So 2018, 9.5 million, 2019, 11 million, 2020 year to date at 10.2 million, as I mentioned before. We're expecting that to end the year between 13 and 14 million as we see consistent, steady sales. And I'll talk about each of the different models in a moment, but it's continuing apace based on the performance year to date. So I wanted to share with you kind of the mix of that revenue and where we're seeing it come from. It is changing slightly, which is interesting and noteworthy. The demand-driven acquisition program, we've got about 460 participants as of this year. But the value of the revenue is moving downwards at 33% of year to date. You would expect, I guess you could expect that number to be increasing as the usage is increasing, but we're actually finding that they're moving into kind of different models. And the evidence-based acquisition has increased for the backlist program by up to 23% of our revenue. But more notable is the firm order purchasing, or the direct and through Gobi title by title purchasing, which means that they're willing to invest proactively in these titles without needing to wait for usage to drive that. And I think that's a lot to do with the trust in our platform, the business models, and the ease at which we are enabling our libraries to order the content. and the preference for the JSTOR platform. These books get used when they're on our platform, and the libraries see this as a really valuable investment. So through Gobi, we've seen that increase from 11% up to 18%. That was a substantial increase. Again, I'll talk about that in a minute. That's being driven by a couple of different things. Also, the direct pick and mix, the purchasing of individual titles direct through JSTOR. We've got nearly 500 customers doing that now, with 25% of the revenue. So a full 43% of the revenue is now coming through the title by title selection. That's up from 33%, and that's a fairly significant increase. So through each of the individual models, how are they performing year to date? As I mentioned before, the DDA revenue has kind of held pretty steady. We've seen a 9% increase last year. We've held on to that increase and grew it just a modest amount over the course of 2020. We do expect this to increase, and I'll talk about the why a little later in the presentation as we move forward. EBA revenue. Right now, we're, as most of you probably know, but I'll just reiterate, right now we're on a cycle of July 1 through June 30th. For 12 months, we offer access to our EBA corpus, which is backlist titles from those that have opted in. And we are continuing to see growth in this model. Last year, the 2019 through 2020 cycle, which ended June 30th, we saw a 20% increase in revenue. And so far, for the 2020 to 2021 cycle, we have recommitted the vast majority of our EBA participants from the previous year, but also added a significant number of new participants. We had a few that have opted out this year, but we were more than able to bring that back with additional participants. Now, we're still early in the cycle, so I expect this number is going to continue to grow, and we'll see really increased performance again, probably not in the 20% range that we had last year, but I do expect it may be upwards of 10 to 12% higher than previous year. But we've got a couple more months of active selling for this model for this year's cycle. And let's talk about Gobi. This is where we're seeing a tremendous amount of growth year over year. You can see last year we also had a significant growth with just about $1 million through Gobi by this point last year, and that was up 54%. But look at this year, we have absolutely exceeded that number, and we're up 130% on title by title firm order purchasing. Now, how much of this is due to libraries switching print approval plans and choosing the JSTOR platform? It could be quite a bit. Obviously, there's been a downturn in print purchasing as the physical libraries were closed, and that has had an impact, which is, for the publishing community, that is, that could be, I'm sorry about that, that could be not as positive a story, but we can tell you that libraries choose the JSTOR platform. They trust us. The simplicity of the model, again, is really something that, and the evidence of usage that they get after that. So for Gobi, we have seen an increase of new libraries signing up to order JSTOR, to be able to order JSTOR content through Gobi. Year to date, we've had 203 academic libraries sign on and add the ability to order JSTOR. Last year at this time, it was 117 for the full, sorry, not last year at this time, but for the full year. It was 117 customers. So really, really significant growth in the number of institutions that want to and have chosen to order JSTOR ebooks on their platform. That brings the total number of libraries eligible to order through Gobi to 971, which is, again, a really significant number of academic libraries have chosen to add the JSTOR platform. So we're seeing a very steady, firm order increase month over month coming through Gobi. And that's fantastic. I'm going to talk a little bit about future developments by Gobi a little later in the presentation. I just wanted to provide you with an overview of sales by country to give you a sense of what's happening around the world with ebook ordering on the JSTOR platform. You can see the US market is, of course, our core audience, and we've seen significant growth, 29% growth over the same period last year. Same thing with UK and Canada. We've seen significant growth in kind of those core markets. We're basically flat in Australia, and New Zealand is slightly under. But there's just varied performance. We see this every year. You've kind of got you get one big order from one institution in a country one year, and it doesn't repeat the next year. So there isn't anything that I would say is concerning about these numbers. We are continuing to look for as many proactive partnerships in parts of the world that you're not seeing on here to ensure that we can take advantage of the opportunities that moving to online courses provides us. All right. With that ends our sales overview, and I'm going to turn it over to my fantastic colleague, Cristina Mezuk, who's going to talk about our COVID-19 response and the impact that this has had on the books program. Cristina.
Hi, thank you, Rebecca. Again, my name is Cristina Mezuk, and I'm the books licensing editor at JSTOR. And I wanted just to talk about the complimentary COVID-19 ebook collection, and specifically, how quickly this came together internally as well as externally, and kind of describe how successful it was from a usage perspective and global reach. Next slide. So around the second week of March, JSTOR was starting to hear from institutions regarding the sudden lack of resources because people could no longer access their local libraries. And so there was definitely a need to have, electronic access. And we decided that we had to act fast and help out the community as best we could. And so we decided to offer a complimentary access to books for institutions who were already participating in other programs on JSTOR. It still kind of blows my mind how fast this came together, because in under a week, we determined our game plan, decided what we wanted to offer, asked for publishers to opt in whatever range of titles they wanted to submit into this collection, figured out a way to grant authenticated access to these non-ebook participants, and then deployed it to participating libraries. And we would not have been able to provide this type of support without publisher input and coordination. So it's very impressive. Next slide, please. So to put things, to kind of like lay the groundwork here, this collection was launched on March 18th, and it was originally slotted to run through June 30th. So during that time, we had about 92 publishers participating in the program with about 38,000 books between them. And this ran the gamut of publishers, offering up 6,000 titles and publishers offering up 10 titles. It totally had a large range for participating publishers, institutions, university presses, etc. And this initial collection was so successful in the usage, and we decided to see if we could extend it through August 31st. And at that time, publishers were able to opt out if they could no longer continue. And so after June 30th, we still had, a very decent chunk of publishers and books still in the collection that we could offer to users. Next slide. So overall, we saw about 7.8 million item requests. So, in this case, an item request is a chapter view or chapter download. We also had over 4,500 institutions who had opted into this collection, which came from around 200 countries and territories. So this is a bunch of numbers. What does that really mean in terms of how does this compare to regular usage and access? I'd like to show you. So next slide, please. So I don't know if you can tell, but there may have been a large spike of one particular collection during March through August. This blue line here is showing the complimentary ebook collection in action as compared to the other licensed content here with EBA and DDA, etc. And so you can see that now it was just being this small subset of books on the platform was being used by so much more people than normal, and it was just being it was just driving such large usage, which just was really impressive. So next slide, please. So if you compare this usage across other years, you can see that there was, just in 2020 thus far, we've already seen 100% increase in usage compared to last year, which is just bonkers. So, you know, we already were seeing a large increase in license usage. You know, in 2020, we had about 40% there increase over last year, but 60% of that increase was from just this COVID-19 ebook collection alone. Again, just astronomical numbers, just great usage and global reach. So next slide, please. So here, I just wanted to show like just kind of like all the countries that were participating in this and like the global reach of it all. And you know, what's impressive is that you know, we had 3,000 of these around 3,000 of these participating institutions in this collection were not previously ebook participants. So this was just like, that's why there was just so much more activity in here, was that we were seeing just so many more eyes from all over the country, all over the world, like accessing this content. So it was really impressive to see. Next slide. So not too surprising that the main most used disciplines in this collection were, you know, what some of our most popular disciplines in general, which was history, sociology, language and literature, political science. You know, these are also usually our top disciplines in our licensed content. So this was not really too surprising for us from this complementary collection. And we gave every publisher that was participating in it, we gave them very detailed usage data at the end of the collection to research and review, because it included institution, country information, and title by title information as well. Next slide. So we heard back from a lot of publishers, you know, after we delivered all this great usage data to them. Next slide, please. And needless to say, it was a hit. So we heard a lot of great positive feedback from publishers. Everyone was really excited to be a part of this initiative, and some people were seeing, you know, usage that they had never seen before because they just had so many more people had their eyes on their content that might not have been seeing it before. And but of course, the big question was at the end was, what do we do next? And I'd like to hand this back to Rebecca to talk about what do we do next.
All right, thank you, Cristina. Okay, so what we did next was something we worked on throughout the course of the free access period. When I think about the benefits to the books program just in general from this program, it's going to be long lasting. We instantly provided access to 3 times the number of institutions that had been purchasing books from us, which gave us a global exposure, a lengthy kind of trial period, even though, you know, we did this truly out of a desire to support the community in a time when they needed it the most. The end result is that we've had an extended trial period, which we've never had. We don't give trials on books. We have, of course, over 6,000 open access books, and we promote the heck out of that during this time period to make sure that folks knew that that was available to them. But it really just gave libraries the evidence that they needed to show that books on our platform will be used. Unlike many other platforms that I've worked with in the past, the usage of books on JSTOR is phenomenal. And the feedback from the community was the same. And the feedback we got not only for making the content available, but sharing with them. We built tools that helped us, and we're showing an example here of a usage report that we would be sending throughout the course of the program and subsequent to that. We really gave them the data they needed, and you can see here the quote from Case Western that how much of increase in the number of titles that were used, and they dropped their turnaways, which was really, you know, just astounding evidence there. And so far, through the end of August, since the end of August, not through the end of August, but since the end of August, we've seen purchases in the neighborhood of 450,000, and that's really pick and mix, and you see the sales increase. I just want to also say that throughout this entire time period, even through March through the end of August, we did not see a decline in book sales. It increased every single month. So the availability of this program did not deter purchasing. And in fact, we did have libraries purchasing in the middle of the free access because their budgets required them to spend money, and they thought this was a worthwhile investment. And we have been sharing that evidence of usage along the way. So they knew that it would be a good investment for them. But what that number doesn't show, the 450,000, is a number of institutions that have subsequently either started EDA programs, or they have added records into their DDA profile that were used during this, so that as they get more usage and there's more proven evidence of demand, that they will trigger purchases for that content for the long run. So this has been just a fantastic exposure for the books platform, and proof and evidence that it's going to be used. And when they buy content on here, that they know it's a good investment. So we are grateful. Libraries talk to us all the time about how supportive JSTOR has been during this crisis, and they're grateful that. And we also reiterate the fact that we couldn't have done this without the publishers who were able to participate. And we also let them know that that there's a reason some aren't able to, and it's a economic crisis that impacts both the publishing community and the library. So it was just all around a very positive story for us, and again, we're grateful for those that were able to participate. So thank you for that. I think Cristina, I think you're all done now. All right, I'm going to move on to talk about sales and marketing, give you an update on what's happening. So one of the biggest developments over the past 2 months has been that we have enabled JSTOR DDA through Gobi. Hopefully most of you know who Gobi is. It's an academic library reseller that has the vast majority of academic libraries in the US and Canada, and in other parts of the world as well. This has been something that libraries have asked for quite some time, but Gobi has only ever supported 2 aggregator platforms for DDA, and that was the EBSCO and ProQuest. So we're the very first new DDA program that they've offered in many, many, many years. And this acquisition option is really about fitting the library's established workflows. Libraries have to manage the same book title available through JSTOR, Muse, through ProQuest, through EBSCO, in print, in hardcover, in paperback. There's so many different options. And they wanted to preference the JSTOR platform, but it was really hard to manage that acquisition workflow if they managed it directly through, if they're a Gobi customer, but managed it directly through JSTOR. So we have enabled this. July 13th, we launched with a few early adopters, which included existing direct DDA customers, but also a few customers who had indicated that once we launched with Gobi, that they would begin ordering. The test proved to work really well. We nailed down a few early bugs in the system, and everything was up and running by August 24th. So we did a wide release at that time. We've done some joint marketing with Gobi with a short video, webinar, against the grain ad. We've done email and social media announcements, and that will continue. We have another one scheduled for early November with Gobi and with University of Maryland, who is one of the early adopters. In less than 2 months, we've added 25 new DDA accounts, and they've already triggered over 41,000 in purchases. Just again, as a frame of reference, we have 400 some odd active DDA accounts. So this is 5% increase in less than 2 months after having the DDA program for many years. We have numerous conversations in the pipeline, and we're really, really eager to see where this takes us. We think this will help us really grow DDA. As I mentioned earlier, I do feel like the small increase we've seen this year is going to be a much bigger uptick next year as a result of this program and other work that we're doing. Some of the marketing strategies and plans that we have for the immediate future, and again, because the landscape is changing so radically, it's hard to make long-term, really, really long-term marketing plans. But what we're going to be doing is, again, continuing to leverage the usage data from the COVID collection to demonstrate demand with case studies, et cetera, that will be talked about for quite some time. The Gobi launch continues. As I mentioned, we have another webinar scheduled for early November, but also the Gobi sales representatives and the JSTOR outreach team are really working in partnership. This is not, we find that the libraries need to know the Gobi side and need to know the JSTOR side. So working in partnership has been the most collaborative, successful way, so that we're helping each other really help the institutions understand what it means to invest in this platform. We also are just on the cusp of 100,000 titles on the platform, and we're going to have a marketing campaign around the growth of the books at JSTOR and the most used content. EBA evidence, we'll continue to promote the EBA platform through case studies and experiences of our participants. As I mentioned earlier, the open access books and the JSTOR platform, we will be sharing much more around the success of that. We do a lot of promotion of the open access content to ensure folks are aware of its availability. And continuing to support remote access and instruction, raising awareness of the JSTOR services to support remote access teaching and learning. I spent more time on this in the archive presentation, but we did quite a bit of work in the early stages and throughout the summer on helping our institutions and helping faculty and users be able to have effective remote access to the content and tips and tricks and that kind of things to ensure that they're able to continue to access the JSTOR platform seamlessly. On the sales side, the sales strategies for the immediate future, COVID usage as a driver for engagement with the 2,000 currently non-participating institutions. It's probably more like 2,500. So we expect that will grow the DBA participation and EBA participation, as well as continue to see increased. We have lots of conversations ongoing around what they've used. It really is the first time we've had that length of time of usage of the platform, and it really has fostered great conversations with libraries around the world. We're also, some of the areas I think we've got some great opportunities that we can do more on the book side. We've got really, really strong partnerships on the archive side in some regions, but it's not providing as much growth as I think we could see in the book side. So in China, Japan, and the Middle East, I think we've got some opportunities to work with some additional resellers to get that off the ground. We're also exploring additional opportunities for EBA to see if we can expand beyond the one time period that we have, which is July through June. Lots of complicated behind the scenes kind of work that needs to be done on that. But the market is demanding that. We've got parts of the world who really want to participate, and working on a different cycle would be much more preferable. So we're working internally on how we can support that. Also looking at expanding partnerships with additional book suppliers. Not every library uses Gobi. Obviously, we've got almost 1,000 libraries ordering through Gobi, but that is a really big other part of it. So we've got some additional partnerships that we expect to be talking about the next couple of months. Also, we've got a new role, consortia account development in the US and Canada. We will be looking, of course, within all contractual obligations with the publishers to explore more opportunities for consortial purchasing in a way that's sustainable for publishers as well as libraries and JSTOR. That's always been an emphasis of mine, is to ensure that the publishing side, that it is sustainable, and the models that we work on are in line and are able to support your program. So I think that is about it for the sales and marketing. I'm going to briefly talk about the outlook for 2021, the challenges, risks, and opportunities, although I feel like I've kind of shared with you some of the opportunities we have already. So the 2021 challenges and risks. The first bullet point there is not going to surprise anyone. The budget cuts from 5 to 50%, sometimes even higher. There's less money for recurring expenses, which is more impacts things like the archive collection, but it's really deeply concerning. We expect reduced retention on our archives. We expect to see more attrition. There's going to be school closures and mergers. We've seen that happening around the world. In the U.S., I think there's been some talk in the Pennsylvania system about merging a lot of those state schools. Reduced enrollments. We have seen reduced enrollments. I think there was a story in the New York Times earlier this week about the significant shortfall in freshman enrollments in both 4-year and 2-year institutions in the U.S. And the big risk, the unpredictable end to the crisis. It's been a heck of a year, and things have moved fast. We've adapted quickly. But at this point, it's still an unpredictable end. We don't know what the coming months are going to bring. So that is a risk and a challenge for us. That said, there does, as we've shown with the increased sales of ebooks over the course of this year on the JSTOR platform, there is opportunity. There is more demand for ebooks. There's more acceptance of ebooks, especially in the humanities and social sciences. That has kind of lagged behind the hard sciences in terms of acceptance of that as the primary format. We expect more collaboration between libraries and sources that I've talked about before. And JSTOR is extremely well positioned with demonstrable usage this year and a value for investment. I talked about that a lot. I'm not going to go on. But for the books program, we do expect to see continued growth in 2021 because of the programs we've implemented, the seamless access to the content, the exceptional business models that we believe are sustainable for the publishing community and will support you moving forward. With that, I am going to end this presentation. Thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you very much, Rebecca and Cristina. We're able to provide a really good overview and update as far as where we are so far here with Books at JSTOR through 2020, our response to COVID-19, and really what the plans are for 2021. We're going to go ahead and put up the first polling question. And the first question here is, what are you most concerned about in your current fiscal year? Shift in sales from print to electronic, overall declining library budgets for monographs, increased percentage of overall revenue through evidence-based types of initiatives. We talked about DDA and evidence-based, a decline in demand for monographs. And as we've done in some of the other polls, if there's any additional comments or so, please go ahead and put that in the questions area or in Slack. Now, Rebecca, while we're waiting for some comments back here on this first polling question, I had personally one area to try to see if I could clarify from you. When you mention 5 to 50% budget cuts for libraries, were you seeing that equally across all content types, or were there maybe any specific areas where those cuts were impacting the most?
I don't think that's completely visible yet. They tend to focus on recurring expenses first, it's which books doesn't really fall into that category, but haven't quite gotten a full picture of that yet.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's also, I just think jobs going to vary by institution to institution, what their priorities are. And needs are, and what changes are happening at their institution as a result of the crisis.
Okay. Let's take a look at what we had on the results here. So obviously, as we can see, we're probably all in that same area of concern around declining library budgets for monographs. Anything here that kind of surprises you at all in the responses, Rebecca, or about what you would expect?
I'm surprised that there's not more concern about the shift in sales from print to electronic. I hope that means that many of the publishers on this call are seeing enough of the electronic revenue making up for some of the print shortfall. Having worked at a monograph publisher for a very long time, I understand the economics of that, and it's very challenging. And I'm sure it's been an unsettling time over the last couple of months, particularly in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, good points. All right, let's take a look at the second polling question. So this here is what sales strategies and future developments do you feel will be most impactful in supporting your revenue growth? So, Rebecca was able to comment on what she's working on with the outreach team and with marketing around some of the strategies. I'd love to hear from you about, do you feel the most impactful would be the COVID-19 usage and using that, engaging with institutions, exploring new additional resellers, as Rebecca talked about, expanding beyond Gobi, additional EBA start dates, expanding partnerships to book suppliers, or a new role to expand consortia relationships in North America. And Rebecca, while we're waiting on those results, there were a few questions that came in when we put the registration out and left some open questions. So we actually had a few coming in here that some publishers wanted to talk about. And one in particular was trying to get a little bit more detailed information on the international market. We have many book publishers who are international publishers outside the United States. And you showed a slide earlier with some growth in some areas. So it would be good to understanding the cuts that we're talking about here. Any specific details, risk, opportunities you can talk about in the international market?
Yeah, I can. I think a great thing to talk about opportunity is through that COVID collection. The number of total registrants of institutions that signed up for that was very heavily weighted to the international market. I think 1,700 of the 3,100 books accounts are from international countries. So India, the UK, Turkey, Germany, Taiwan, and India top that list. So that, with 800 or so accounts across that. So that is really helping us to kind of open the door to the books participation. Having come from OUP previously, I know how wide that OUP was able to reach into some of those international markets where they had offices. So I can see that there's some opportunity for us to get in there with English language content, as well as the non-English language content that we have on the platform.
That's great, thank you.
Sure.
Let's go ahead and take a look at the results here.
Pretty evenly split there.
Definitely is. Well, it's good that, like what you've been talking about, at least from expanding the relationships we have with resellers and book suppliers. I mean, those seem to be areas, especially when we're seeing results, and especially with COVID-19 in particular, probably for those publishers that participated in there and some of the positive results that you were seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to say that the additional EBA start dates for us, that actually will help open up some international markets where they operate on a completely different timeline. And the cycle we had in place proves to be slightly more difficult for them to manage. So I do think that's also going to open up some opportunity there. But the usage during the COVID collection time period has been really, really great for sparking conversations. Got folks really thinking about how to incorporate JSTOR as a platform in the future. So I'm really excited about that.
And with that comment, I'm going to bring in another question that came in earlier, and it really kind of builds off of that. So it's with the success of the COVID-19 ebook collection, what are your plans moving forward to keep the new users? I know you talked about that a little bit, Rebecca, so I don't know if there's any additional detail maybe you want to expand on.
Yeah, we built these tools. I think I mentioned it briefly, but I know there was a lot of information in that presentation. Sorry, I tend to go on. A lot of great things to talk about, though. We built these tools that help us quickly generate usage at an institution, and we really do work in the outreach team and require them to touch base with each of the institutions that participated or work with our agents in the region. So that has been, we want to engage with them. So kind of sharing with them the usage, comparing it with what these institutions currently hold, and making connections with the content that they might already be subscribing to on the JSTOR archives. that really is going to continue on and on for some time. I expect that will, as we get closer to end of the year spending times at different end of the academic year spending times at different parts of the world, we re-engage with them to make sure they know what they were using and can continue access.
That's great. Now, so now we're going to learn a little bit about the this question. I think is a good one to build off of, and probably expands a little bit on your positioning, especially when we're talking about the COVID-19 collection. And it is the COVID pitch to what is the COVID pitch to libraries? When you have access to the collection, it will get used. So hang on a second. Let me read this again.
Yeah,
oh,
no,
okay.
I think I understand it.
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
It does. Yeah, I mean that's the books at JSTOR pitch. It is that I think monographs, as we all know in the print world, the circulation of print monographs in the library is really minimal. And I think the making them available electronically and finding ways to expose users to the content within really helps books really flourish in the digital space. And I think on the JSTOR platform, the integration of books and journals is so good. The presentation of the information is so clear and it's so connected that it is going to get more use than it could have ever had in a print world. And it's just, the users are so, I don't want to say fanatical, but they just love the platform, and it really, the search really exposes what they need to see. I think there's more we can do to continue to expose the insides of books in a way that you could never have done in a print world. And the evidence is there. Like you can see it. We have the evidence at their fingertips. If they invest in this book content, they will have use. And I think that's a very powerful story.
Yeah, no, that's great response. Thank you. This one probably going to be a little bit tougher, and it's going to more kind of dig into your experience, probably just with electronic monographs in general and what you've been hearing so far from libraries. And it is, what do research library acquisition budgets for books tell us about trends for ebook sales over the next 5 or 10 years? So kind of probably building a little further than your 2021 guidance there, Rebecca.
Yeah. I mean, the world is changing so rapidly. It's changed kind of every step of the way, every month of the way this year. I feel, I can only do it based on anecdotal conversations and reading the literature that I read and the work that Ithaca S&R has done. I don't know what it'll look like overall, but I feel like the movement towards E has taken a really sharp turn in a positive direction from what I can see, that they know they want to provide this information. I think JSTOR's book platform proves it's useful and proves that this type of long-form scholarship continues to have a place. So I don't know, again, what it may look like. I think it may, there might be more collaborative collection development, like we've talked about, in terms of consortia working together to acquire material, and less desire to kind of stand alone and have separate, unique types of those kinds of collections. But I think the usage is evidence that there's a need for this and a desire for it. We just need to expose people to it in the best possible way to help it remain relevant.
Yeah, that's great. And, I wanted to kind of expand on one of the slides that Rebecca presented earlier, and especially the excitement that we had on our expanded partnership with Gobi. And, she showed close to 1,000 Gobi members that were participating in JSTOR. But when you look at like standard pick and mix acquisitions, libraries throughout a year will spend on average about $4,000 doing pick and mix title acquisitions, at least through JSTOR's measurements. And when we look at the average through a demand-driven acquisition, that gets closer to $13,000 on average each year. So again, they're exposing more access to ebook content, letting users find that content. The relevance and the usage that's so high on the JSTOR platform is very clear to then the faculty and users on JSTOR, as opposed to relying on library selectors finding titles that they think might fit a reading list, standing order, that is in place. So we've seen significant overall increases. And Rebecca, I want to just kind of see from your view, have you seen that as well, or some discussions with Gobi or institutions about that?
Yeah, I having been on the other side as a publisher for a long time and a publisher of monographs, I always worried about usage models and looking at DDA models just in general, because I always worried about whether or not there'd be enough demand for it to be sustainable. And I think that's where we're seeing kind of the positive movement is through the evidence of usage of this COVID collection. A lot of libraries who were kind of on the fence about it were able to sort of overcome their worry about this as an acquisition model, but also that it's a good long-term investment as opposed to just like a short-term, somebody's going to be using it today and never use it again. I hope I'm making sense on that. Sorry, John.
Yep.
But the usage on this platform is just so phenomenal on the book side. It really is. I haven't seen anything like that before, and it's just continuing to grow.
Thank you. I definitely had seen the same. I think just with, as publishers know, we've talked about it, and I know Rebecca mentioned, but just not only the spike of usage we saw in COVID-19 collection, the increase, we close to 10 million item requests of open access ebook content. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but the table of content views, which shows where the libraries turn away of ebook content at their institutions, just the overwhelming continued demand for ebook content on JSTOR. I know it's been very helpful for the outreach team in particular, I think, to show the value of JSTOR platform and ebook demand, right?
Yeah, we have really great tools to be able to talk about it, to discuss with libraries. We can do good predictions of what kind of books usage they'll have based on archive usage if they haven't bought into the books program before. And it's just, it's really, truly evidence-based, which is fantastic. And we have great evidence.
Great. And Cristina, a question I just wanted to turn to you. Based on the conversations that you've been having with publishers, I know there have been several of them throughout the year, what be good to know kind of what seems to be maybe a recurring theme you're hearing on some of the concerns they're having, and what have been some good tools, some of the updated usage reports and information that we've been able to provide that's helped them really get a better understanding about how their content's being used in revenue.
I would say a couple of concerns have just been increasing discoverability, or just maybe worried that prices are a little bit too low, or maybe they just haven't had a chance to, at a press, there's like a lot of competing, things going on, and maybe they didn't have a, now that the shift to E, they are focusing more on that, and they might not have had as many resources to focus in on that. But I know that the new publisher admin portal that was launched in February or March, I believe, is being used and is useful for publishers to see, not only open access usage if they have an open access title, but also, all of their titles at the being used, all the item requests that they can see coming in, and can use that to their benefit. And trying to think if there was anything else. No, I can't think of anything.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. And I did want to just, I know Cristina and I wanted to make a note to all the publishers too. So probably in the next couple of months, you'll be seeing from us a new amendment within the agreement. And a lot of the things that Rebecca's talked about today, and a lot of the new developments we're doing on our ordering system to really try to simplify workflows, especially for libraries. We have a few amendment changes we're doing in the agreements we'll be sending to you. We reviewed this with over a dozen publishers, making sure that they felt very comfortable with the amendment language, and really to allow for us to continue and expand our partnership together to really utilize those opportunities that Rebecca has outlined. So expect to be hearing from Cristina and or me in the very near future as we work together to really be able to expand and support this program. So Rebecca, I want to turn it to you to see if you have any other parting comments. I'm not seeing any other questions coming in that you'd like to say to the publishers.
Yeah, just thanks so much for the support during the COVID situation. For those of you that were able to support it, I just want you to know that in my work, I fully understand the economics behind monograph publishing. I understand what library acquisitions issues are and challenges and the models. And I'll be doing everything I can to ensure that we can continue to publish really good, high quality monographs that get more exposure and more use and are really thrive in this digital space and not just survive, because I think there's some great opportunity out there and we're always working on your behalf. And I just want to thank you for that and offer my time. If you ever want to talk about what we're doing, have any questions, I would love to chat with you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And Cristina, any comments or feedback or anything to provide publishers? I know you're so involved in talking to them on a consistent basis, so probably summarize some of those discussions here.
Yeah, just echoing Rebecca, like thank you. For anyone who participate in the COVID-19 complimentary collection, thank you so very much for jumping in and helping and everything with that. And yeah, I know all the the production side of stuff with books, and I can help you if you ever have questions like, I don't know how to turn this book open access, or I don't know how to get my usage reports, like we're here to help you. And if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Thanks, Cristina. And thank you both very much for not only for putting the time into for the presentation, the information to make available today, but just the feedback and your ability of answering the questions. And I hope to all of you on the other side of that, for the publishers, that you were able to find this to be informative. A lot of it, we're kind of providing some of the performance sales updates that we try to provide to you each year. If we haven't spoken to you, Cristina and or I, that we are available to provide detailed information to you around how your content's performing. We look at averages against what your cost is per title and how that might compare to on average across the program to kind of help give you some guidance there. We can look at a lot of good analysis for you and help you with some of your future planning and looking at some of the projections we might see for your titles. And that there's a lot of positive things here. From the year. You've heard from Rebecca, and we've seen just a tremendous pickup from libraries and acquiring ebook content. But a couple numbers here to also remember is that not only have we seen sales increasing, as Rebecca showed, 25% year to date. You got to look at the also commitments that libraries have made through some of these evidence-based programs. And Rebecca, correct me here, but we had close to 3 million committed already for ebooks. That means that's money already secured for next year that will go to libraries. And the last I saw, we were close to probably about 2.7 million in deposits that were provided in for demand driven. So there's already about $6 million that is also committed to future acquisition sales for publishers. That
yeah.
seem right?
Yeah, that is exactly right. I'm sorry I didn't mention that DDA deposit value, which is another sort of indication of support for this program, and that doubled throughout the course of the pandemic, nearly doubled. Sorry, don't want to be inaccurate. So again, that's just sort of a commitment to the platform and a commitment to understanding that they're willing to invest in it, and it's money well spent in a time of economic crisis. They want to be able to offer this content and get the books to the users that want them when they want them. And I think it's been fantastic. So nearly 6 million, I guess, sitting there waiting to be spent on your content.
That's great. So again, parting words, please reach out to us, and we're more than willing to engage and work with you and answer any questions that you have and help you with thinking about your projections moving forward. And we will take a break now until 2:30. And when we come back, we are going to focus then and look at some open access publishing models. And as I mentioned, John Scherer from University of North Carolina Press will provide an update and some analysis from his perspective and some of the research that's been done of looking at the cost of publishing as open access. And Angela Carreño at New York University will talk about some of the experiences she's had around supporting some of those models. And I'll be participating on the presentation side, showing you some detailed usage of the open access content on JSTOR and ways that we can look at partnering with each other in the future. So thank you very much and look forward to talking to you again here in about 30 minutes. Thank you again, Cristina
Thank you, everyone.
and Rebecca.